Hello and welcome to Super Insider, Australian Retirement Trust podcast on everything you need to know to make the most out of your super. My name is Anne Fuchs and I'm the Executive General Manager of Advice, Guidance and Education here at Australian Retirement Trust. Look, I'm absolutely thrilled and I should say thrilled to be talking about financial advice today, of course, as the EGM of Advice, Guidance and Education. But before we do that, as a very good compliant podcast, I just want to remind our listeners that what you're listening to today is general advice only, and you'll really need to think about if this is right for you. Now, Garth Collingwood joins me today from River City Financial Planning. Welcome, Garth.
Thank you, Anne. Good to see you.
Look, this is a very kind of relaxed environment where we just cover all things about super, retirement and, investments, advice, strategies. And we are so thrilled you're here because you would look after so many of our members with their retirement planning needs.
It's an absolute pleasure, Anne, to be honest, and they sleep very soundly at night.
Yeah, that's great. And so tell us just a little quick sort of 2-second about who you are and your business.
Yep. So I work River City Financial Planning. We're a small little boutique planning advice business based out of Brisbane. I've been planning for about 20 odd years and we specialise in retirement planning, superannuation, Centrelink, along those lines. Okay.
And after all these years, even though you look very young, sir, you are very, very experienced. and what after all the years of doing the financial advice that you have, particularly with retirement planning, is there one kind of the constant question that you always get asked?
How much do I need to retire, or can I afford to retire now? Without a doubt, is one of those questions that just keeps coming through. It plays on people's minds. As soon as an article goes through the media, all of a sudden it'll be, right, I've just got told I need X amount of dollars. Therefore, where am I? How's it going to play out?
Yeah, okay. And so it must be, I know for many of our members, going to see a financial advisor is very daunting. I often joke that for some members it would probably feel like a combination of marriage counselling and the dentist. That's what they're worried about. And I guess that's why we're having this podcast today, is because we want to show Australians that going to an advisor is the opposite of that. If, there are great financial advisors out there. Someone shows up and says, do I have enough money to retire on? I guess what do you think they expect when somebody walks in for the first time to an advisor? And is it different to the reality? What should they be expecting?
When they come in, what they need to understand is that there is no set figure that everyone should have. Everyone's different. People retire at different ages. People spend different amounts of money. When they come in to see a financial advisor, they're going to sit down and we're just going to have a chat, work out exactly what it is they're after. And to be honest with you, not a lot of people know precisely why they're there. It might be because there's been a recent event in their lives that's driven them in. They've been compelled to. For other people, it might be an event coming up down the track where all of a sudden they're thinking, right, mortgage is paid off. Kids are starting to feed themselves. Mm-hmm. When can I transition to the next phase of my life? So they'll typically come in and we'll start by just having a chat. And from our point of view, we have to understand what it is there is. There's no one size fits all. Everything you're doing is tailored to the individual. Some people might be extremely risk averse, but it might be because of experiences they've had in the past. It's definitely about going through and, for us, gaining an understanding of what it is they're after. From there, you're trying to go through all the different concepts. So there'll be a lot of different levels of knowledge. It wasn't that long ago, to be honest, noise coming from the front end of my car. And it started to grow and I jumped on Google. And as we we've all got this vast sum of human knowledge in our pockets now. Going through it, I could see, yep, it's probably this, it's a CV joint, it's a wheel bearing. I'm like, right, everyone's saying this. I thought about sitting there one Saturday and doing it myself, and I ended up, to be honest, going straight to a mechanic, straight off the bat. Didn't even have to lift the hood. He said, yep, no, that'll be the right front suspension fork. Knew exactly what it was without doing it. And that's the difference, I think, between reading about something and getting bombarded with information, opinions versus speaking to someone who actually knows what they're doing.
And who helps people retire day in, day out. Because most people only retire once in their life, but you've probably retired hundreds of people.
Thousands.
Thousands.
I'd put it at.
Thousands.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? Because I think another thing people worry about, Garth, they're worried about the cost of advice and is it going to be, can I afford it? Am I rich enough? How am I going to pay for it? So I think that's a bit of an elephant in the room. So let's talk about it.
Look, every step of the way, you're going to know what the costs are going to be before you have to pay them. So if you're seeking advice, you may ring up your super fund, you may ring up an advisor. What's the first step? Typically, it's going to be about speaking to them. It might be an appointment where you come in. It might be a phone-based appointment, whatever it may be, and the cost will be disclosed to you at that point in time. After you've met with the planner, the advisor, whoever it may be who's going to be helping you, they will go through the next steps with you. Typically, it's going to be drawing up a statement of advice. In some cases, it might be a matter of, well, there's nothing to be done at this stage, but pop back in when you want to have a chat. If they have to proceed to drawing up advice, they'll disclose to you exactly what those fees are going to be. For most people, it's based on the scope of the work. If it's something relatively simple, it may cost a lot less than something that's quite complicated. Some super funds, they look after their members directly and things like that.
Yeah, through the simple intra-fund advice, which we have at Australian Retirement Trust for, advice on your account. But obviously, if you're doing broader comprehensive advice, you can pay for the retirement planning advice about your account through an external financial advisor, through deducting a fee out of your super fund account. Yeah,
typically most people do prefer to have it deducted from their super when the fund allows it. Some people prefer to pay up front themselves out of their pocket. There'll be options. At every step of the way, you're not getting locked into anything. You're aware of what the fees are going to be, and you work with the advisor to work out the best way that you can cover that cost.
And how do you think advisors determine whether a client or an individual needs just a one-off, moment in time type advice, or they need something that's more ongoing, that type of concept of I need to be held to account type of scenario?
It may well be that someone's looking at a single event where they just want to sit down, something's changed in the news about salary sacrifice, they want to understand what that is, are they getting the most out of it? From our point of view, we might be looking at it saying, we can do this, we can set it in motion. There's not a need necessarily to pay for ongoing advice or to seek regular advice on this sort of strategy, and we'll be upfront with them and let them know that. For other people, particularly those approaching retirement, there's a lot of factors that'll come into play with regards to whether or not they want to seek advice on a regular basis.
Like what type of things?
Personal circumstances change. Legislation changes. It may be investment markets are choppy and you want to speak to someone to understand exactly what's happening. For most people, knowing that there's someone who can play the devil's advocate for you to help you make those decisions, that seems to be a lot of the value that a lot of people get.
And look, I have to say there's a lot of the work I think advisors do is probably talking people out of making bad financial decisions, like switching to cash at the worst possible time in a market cycle.
Yeah, and that's what it comes back to. Just having someone to talk through and go through and put it in perspective for you.
Garth, tell me, so, we've spoken a lot about super, but the world of financial advice is a big one. So what else can a financial advisor help the ordinary person with?
Look, so when we're giving advice to someone, we're not looking just at super. We're looking at things like tax minimisation, investment planning, investments outside of super, estate planning, cash flow, what you're living off, all those kinds of things. You're drawing on a different range of subjects that you're going to bring together to give someone a plan or a strategy that's going to maximise the probability.
What they're entitled to, probably.
Centrelink is a big one.
Yeah.
Every dollar you get from Centrelink or DVA is a dollar of your own that you don't have to spend. And for some people, it might be as simple as I want $1 a fortnight so that I get access to the healthcare card. Going through those options for people and helping them understand how it's assessed and what their entitlements may be down the track or imminently retiring, gives them a lot of peace of mind.
Is there any particular thing in relation to, I guess, for, the typical kind of person, that retirement planning, tax, estate planning, things that just the ordinary person needs to be alive to or thinking about where advice can really help?
The big one, I think, is there are a lot of tax benefits one can gain from superannuation, and they change constantly. And to be honest, most people are taking advantage of it. And if you're not, you need to keep up. So without a doubt, anything to do with that, superannuation, salary sacrificing, spouse contributions, if you've got a non-working spouse. There are a lot of carrots out there designed to get you to look after your own retirement, to ultimately, from the government's point of view, save them money in terms of the amount of age pension they pay out. The more you have, the less they pay. Superannuation is not a short-term thing. It's your life savings, and it's there for the rest of your life and your spouse's life thereafter for most people. It doesn't bode well for rash decisions in the short term to try that. To be honest, it can be quite costly as it goes through.
Are there sort of, are there any highlights of a client you've had where someone's come in and they're like, oh my God, I'm never going to have enough money to retire? Have you got like a nice story that's stuck in your mind that you think our listeners or viewers would love to understand to bring it to life, what you do?
There are people who'll touch base. I can think of one in particular. Will touch base about a decade before they retire. And we'll sit down and, to be honest, their perception of what a financial advisor was coming in was to do with investment markets and returns and things like that. We were able to strip it back and say, look, what are we spending? What are we living off? They were a person of meagre means. They'd been through a family separation and they were trying to get their life back on track. We were able to put them on a path whereby they'd have a bit more control of their future, more savings, things like salary sacrifice. Every dollar of take-home pay they gave up, they were effectively putting $1.30 into their super. What that did was mean that they could afford to retire a bit earlier. Going along the way, rules changed. We had to tailor it. You've always got to keep readjusting as the rules change on the playground, so to speak.
Yeah.
But then getting there at the end and just sort of, they were thankful, but I was, no, you did this. You were the one who went without. You put the savings aside. You understood the investment risk and you continued to go up through ups and downs.
Yep.
And all of that experience, knowing what they were living off, having gone through market movements, meant that they were in a position to retire when they did. They're still a very happy client. And I've just got a soft spot in my heart, to be honest, because it was a long-term win. They applied themselves and those little things just added up in the end.
Well, you know why I love that story? Because I think a lot of people think advice is for the very wealthy. They're very affluent. But I think that story is great because they were probably, as you said, they were very financially stretched and in a position where they weren't particularly affluent, and you're able to coach them through so that they could maximise their retirement.
And they were just so proud of the fact that they were sticking with it, and that's just always stuck with me.
Okay.
That's why we do it.
So final question around what are the key kind of strategies that you talk to clients about as they're preparing for thinking about retirement?
The key one, superannuation is a focus for everyone as they approach retirement. And you're starting by getting an understanding of that. Is an off-the-rack sort of solution appropriate? Are you comfortable with that? Right, what are our savings? What are we spending? Let's get an idea of what we live off now. There's a lot of surveys that say people need X or Y in retirement for comfortable or whatever it may be. The reality is for most people, it comes back to what they're spending while they're working. So gauging that, salary sacrificing, reviewing insurance. If they're in a position where kids have grown up and left, there's no debt anymore, having a look at where that sits along the way, making sure estate planning things up to scratch. To be honest, although you may be on the home stretch in retirement, it tends to be where stress can really play an impact in your life. particularly health-wise. All those kinds of things drawn together put people on the path they need to be to be honest, it's like, well, what date can I retire? Well, it's a personal choice. It's not a financial. But you need the confidence to make that decision. And if you know in yourself what you've been living off, what you're comfortable with, then you're more empowered to make that kind of decision when you want to.
Yeah, it's a really conscious, deliberate decision, which I think a lot of people don't feel particularly empowered when it comes to money.
It's a jargony industry, as you know, and it's not designed to be able to pick up easily, and it tends to get more complicated over time. So even from our point of view, just being able to explain things, it may not be advice at all, but right, I've read this, what does this mean? And just sitting down and going, okay, let's go through it. What does that refer to? That can help people make decisions that they need to for their retirement.
So, Garth, I think hopefully we've busted a few myths today where, our listeners or viewers might be thinking, oh, well, advice isn't for me because I'm not rich enough, or advice isn't for me because I can't afford it, or advice isn't for me because I just don't understand and I'm not kind of fancy enough or whatever it might be. But I think you've myth busted all of those.
No, if you've got finances, you can benefit from advice. And it's not about how much have I got. Most people will have super. And it's almost heartbreaking when people come to you when they retire. And you from our point of view, you're looking at saying, gee, if you've just done this for the last 10 years, given up a little bit a fortnight, a week, a month, salary sacrifice, the results are almost immeasurable. I've never had a person who regretted looking at their super long before they needed to access it.
That's incredibly powerful. The analogy I often use is the sunscreen. There's no point putting on sunscreen in your 60s.
I like it.
You like it?
I like it.
Good. I say that with my Irish skin. Yes. Oh, well, it's been marvellous having you on the show, Garth. Thank you for everything that you do, looking after many of our members who are retiring well with confidence. And thank you for just educating, I guess, the Super Insider community about what it's like to go to a financial advisor and how a financial advisor can help.
We're not all scary.
No.
I would urge everyone to have a chat to either their super fund or financial advisor. But thank you very much for having me.
That's all we have time for now today. If you enjoyed today's episode, the very best way to support us is by rating us or leaving a review. And if you'd like to be the first to hear about our future episodes, make sure you follow or subscribe to Super Insider wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find the links in our show notes. Thank you for listening to Super Insider, and we hope you can join us again next time.